Good morning and welcome to a new edition of A Coffee With. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Emma Asko. She's a project manager on transport at State of Green and one of the editors behind the newly launched publication Towards Zero, Denmark's push to decarbonize global shipping. The publication presents Denmark's contributions to the global maritime transformation, showcasing pathways to net zero by 2050 through green fuels, energy efficiency, carbon capture, offshore wind, and the upskilling of the maritime workforce. Shipping is, as we know, at a decisive turning point. Despite the IMO net zero framework being postponed, the industry faces global requirements of emission reduction and fuel certification, making this decade the critical window for action. Through her work at State of Green, Emma Asko helps bring together Danish and international stakeholders to share solutions for decarbonizing one of the world's most complex sectors. Her work reflects how Denmark combines policy leadership, industrial innovation, and cross-border collaboration to move shipping towards a just and inclusive net zero future. Good morning, Emma. It's a pleasure having you with us.
Good morning.
The global transformation of shipping. A huge topic.
Yeah.
So let's start with the broader horizon. Shipping is indeed undergoing a massive structural shift from fossil-based propulsion into sustainable energy systems. Could you outline, based on the publication State of Green recently launched, where we stand globally on the path to decarbonization of shipping and what role Denmark is actually playing in driving this forward?
Yeah, well, right now, shipping is 3% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So compared to Denmark, which is around 0.1% of global greenhouse gas emissions, it's a very huge sector. So there needs to be a lot of strives to actually decarbonize, and if we want to follow the Paris Agreement. So some of the things that's being done and we outline in the publication is we're beginning to focus on green fuels more and more. It seemed like technically something that was very difficult and almost not feasible for many people. But right now, Denmark has shown that it is actually technical viable. Now it's more scaling to bring down cost, innovations. We make green fuels primarily through renewable energy from wind in Denmark. We have one plant that is producing e-methanol for shipping, and then there's more plants to come. Then another side is not the technical, but more the policy, the regulation, the frameworks. In Denmark, we have both had a fund to start the scaling of power to X, but also we're focusing a lot on the infrastructure. And one of the ways to bring down cost is, of course, to transport the hydrogen from ports to ships, but also down the country and maybe to Germany. So right now we're beginning to see the framework and subsidies for a pipeline to Germany for hydrogen. So that's the two different sides of the coin, to make a stable framework, to make investments more secure, but also to research and develop the technology we already have and have had for many years.
Yeah.
But in a global scale, you could see that we're still far behind, or still a lot way to go, maybe better said. We see that countries shipping nations want to, shipyards wants to actually transition, but it is very expensive. And when you have green fuels being so expensive, there's other ways you might want to start. And that's where energy efficiency is like a key, because you can always start with energy efficiency. It would have a benefit for most everyone, because you bring down cost and you make also time and operation and maintenance. And in Denmark, we've also, since we are kind of a strong shipping nation, we've had a lot of experience with shipping. That's one of the places where we're beginning to start. So depending on where the nation or the companies is on the journey. There's a lot of steps you can go.
Yeah.
And I think Denmark has a lot of good solutions to showcase, but not necessarily saying you should do exactly the same. Not like we do it perfectly. We still have a long way to go, but maybe that's a good inspiration. And wherever a country is in their journey, they can see what kind of initiatives Denmark are doing.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks so much. Energy efficiency, a topic we'll be coming back to that in a few seconds. But thanks for setting the scene. And what would you say are amongst the most promising developments or milestones we have seen recently, be it internationally or in Denmark? How would you say what comes to your mind when you think about that one?
I think there's two milestones. One is more local and one is more global. The local national Danish one is the European energy plant in Kassø, where they're producing power to X, but making this power to X into e-methanol, mostly from solar panels. And one of the biggest off-takers is, of course, Maersk. So we're already seeing ships, dual-engine ships, run on green fuels. So that's a very great project, like the first of its kind, but it's, of course, one vessel out of hundreds and thousands of vessels that need to run on green fuels. But on a bigger scale, we're seeing on European Union that they are wanting to introduce the dual side auction mechanism, as I remember. And that's been something we've seen from the industry, but also from the government, something that really is a thing you've been asking for a long time. I think for the people who doesn't know how it works, it's instead of having to go directly to the producers to buy the fuel, you can go through this middleman. Here it would probably be a part of the European Union, and buy the fuels for a shorter contract. Normally when you do produce fuels, you have to have at least 10, 20, 50 years contracts because it's such a long investment. But instead here you can have shorter investments. So there is a bigger security, and then there is the middleman making sure that they buy up the green hydrogen and sell it up for shorter contracts. And it's both, especially in aviation and shipping, something that's been asked for a lot, because they simply cannot commit to 50, 20, 10 years contract because the market is developing so quickly. There's so many, they're also constantly against each other, trying to be the cheapest way of doing things. So that will help a lot. It will also bring investment in developing technologies and new plans for power to X, make more confidence, more stability in the market. That's what we see, what we saw with wind energy, that it's all about making sure investments are secure and there's stability, and that would be a really great step towards it. So that's more the international. I think that's the newest point.
Thanks so much, and very interesting. We only had recently here Hanne Klinte from the Open Roar Kommune, who is actually at the forefront with the Kassel plant of European energy, also very close to the German border, making sure that sustainable fuels are reality also at scale. State of Green is very much about knowledge sharing, best practice. You spoke about inspiration. From your perspective, how can knowledge sharing and international collaboration ensure that we both deliver on environmental as well as economic value when we talk about sustainable shipping?
Well, I think that everyone has tried to have a lot of knowledge and sitting in a room not knowing where to go with it. I think that sharing both the good experience, what we've done well, but also the times when things have failed. It's not like Denmark is perfect. We had wind tenders that's failed before, and showing off that these are the things we learned. Don't do this, because then you save a lot of money, time, and then also show this is what we've seen worked. Might not be exactly the same in another country. One of the big things Denmark is doing, if we have government-to-government collaboration between the maritime authorities and specialized countries around the world. One of them is India. This is where we have some key knowledge partner from the Danish Maritime Organization. Often they go traveling, speaking to local governments about what we have learned, how we have developed. It could be green shipping, but also like how we make security, reskilling, all these requirements. And then hopefully through that, they can take some points or actions away and use it themselves. But otherwise, they can also say, these are some things we have experienced. What maybe you can get something, learn something from it. Especially also in Europe, we are such a closely together. And one of the ways we are even closer is, of course, shipping, because shipping is such a global trade. Most of all trade is through shipping. So making sure that we can find a common ground, find some common regulations, maybe, hopefully, in the future. That is very huge.
Yeah, so indeed, know-how transfer is never a one-way road. It goes in both directions. And indeed, it's not only about sharing best practices, but also sharing mistakes and failures and learning from failures and being able to admit failure and share this experience also for others to draw conclusions from that. If we are coming to the whole debate about green fuels and infrastructure, because the report or the publication you've launched clearly shows that green fuels is no longer a technological challenge.
No.
We can produce green fuels, that's not a problem. However, scaling is a challenge. So how is Denmark helping to create the conditions for a global green fuel markets, from power to X and e-methanol to port-based fuel infrastructure? You mentioned it briefly.
Yeah, well, there's different ways we're doing it. First of all, we have frameworks, regulations in place and trying to make it at the same framework all around. We're also collaborating closely with countries like Germany, but also other neighboring countries to make sure that we have similar regulations and also we agree on trade. Especially when it comes to shipping, right now, e-methanol is the most viable option for green fuels. Hopefully, in the future, ammonia will also be more viable. It's more dense, energy intensive than e-methanol, but there's a lot of other issues with safety and being harder to produce. But to produce e-methanol, you also need carbon. So that's where Denmark is both combining funds for power to X and regulation, but also a lot of new regulation and funding for carbon capture. This is a whole new market, nothing like it to capture and transport carbon. And those are one of the big ways. And then also getting the transportation, the infrastructure in place. One of the ways right now is we are not Denmark, but they want to build out a new pipeline from Esbjerg, then to the middle of Jutland, very close to the Kassø facility, and down to Germany. And one of the ways is giving subsidies to make sure that it will be built if there's enough capacity sale. And also talking with stakeholders in Germany and Denmark, because someone needs to buy the capacity for the pipeline for it to even be built. And that means there needs to be producers and off-takers, and it's often the chicken and the egg issue. Who's going to buy it? Who's going to produce it? And there's many ways to help with this, a stable market, investments, but also just going into a dialogue, talking. And that's where Denmark and Germany shines, because we're very close and very good at collaborating, trying to find solutions. So that's some of the main ways we're doing it currently, but also working on an EU policy level. So we can't stand alone, of course.
Because at the end of the day, if as a shipping company you are transporting goods and you need to refill your ship with e-methanol, you would need the infrastructure, you would need the same standard of e-methanol and so forth. And this would be my next question. We have seen that, and Maersk is a key customer behind the Kassø plant in Aabenraa. Maersk also has the first e-methanol container vessel, Laura Maersk, a few months ago. and several offtake agreements, like for instance with European Energy. Do you see such projects shape investment confidence and a stronger collaboration between different economic actors along the value chain, producers, off-takers, shipping agents, the industry, and so forth? Is that a kickstart in a way?
Yeah, I think it's a very strong signal when such a huge player as Maersk, one of the biggest transport of goods in the world on sea, so that they're beginning to not only buy e-methanol, but also getting ships that can run on e-methanol with the dual ships. Because when you buy one of these big vessels, you need to have it for at least 25 years. So we see that the vessels that's going to be bought and invested in now from companies, if we want the green transition to follow and green fuels to actually be viable and be a thing of the future, then the vessels they buy now is actually the vessels we need to look at. So it's a very strong signal that Maersk is doing this. We can also see that when there is a big off-taker, then there's it's not only European Energy anymore that stands alone with the burden, but we see that other companies are getting interested. CIP also have 2 notable projects in the works, and we also see that more off-takers or investors from different countries are getting more interested in what is happening in Denmark right here. I myself see every time I talk about Kassø that people get very interested in it, because it is a very down-to-earth case, and you can see it, you can visually go there and see the production. We also have other smaller plants, like there is a smaller one in called Andel has, but it's more producing green gas. So we can see that it's beginning to slowly happen, but and that Maersk is there is of course a huge step. And now they are not standing alone. I know other ones are looking to them and seeing if they do it, they should probably also. So in the sector, it's a huge signal.
Yeah, indeed, it's a lighthouse project, and again, like the Kassel facility actually shows that it's possible to produce e-methanol at scale, at economic terms. So it's a good start, and it's a convincing examples for others to draw inspiration from.
And they're seeing a continued benefits in the sense that now they've done it for. It was officially open this year. They had like a small production from last year, but as recently a few months ago, they told that because of the upscaling, but also because of research and development, they're seeing their costs go down.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest thing is, of course, the gap in cost between green fuels and the fuels we use now.
Yeah.
It's way more expensive, and it's understandable in a competitive market. You can't spend so much money on fuels. But when we see that the fuel costs go down on such a relatively small plant compared to how much fuel we need in the whole world at scale, then we know that it will only decrease from now on. It will only be more viable in the future. And that's where a lot of people, they just stand still and get maybe a bit scared of the price. Instead, if we look to other sectors where Denmark have great experience in the green transition, like wind energy, we see that's one of the cheapest ways to get energy as a whole currently.
Because with volume prices go down. And then we'll be not only at competitive prices, but potentially cheaper prices to what we have today. And we have not even factored in the energy security and the sovereignty we get with renewable energies, for instance.
One fact I heard recently, which I since then have said many times, is the first wind turbine erected in Denmark 44 years ago and connected to the grid. What it produced in 44 years from then to now is the same amount as a new wind turbine produces in 10 days. So if we stop now, if we stop now, we never get to a place where it actually will maybe not be the same price, but be competitive, and then taking in of course the green factor like the environmental factor and taking in the factor of the resilience and sovereignty, then suddenly green fuels becomes a very competitive advantage.
Through scale and technological innovation.
Exactly.
Another topic, and you've briefly mentioned it already in the beginning, beyond fuels, and we spoke a lot about fuels now, the publication also emphasizes energy efficiency as a relatively easy to go and easy to manage tool as well as skills development.
Yes.
How can improvements in energy efficiency help reduce the cost barrier for adopting green fuel? So what are you talking about when you are saying energy efficiency as a tool is also easy to implement and is already kind of like contributing significantly to decarbonizing shipping?
Yeah. Well, first of all, if you don't have a vessel that can run on green fuels, then you might have to look other ways until you might in the future have vessels or have a fleet on green fuels. And energy efficiency is like the first easiest and cheapest step to go. There's many ways of doing it. DHI has made, a Danish company, has made something called the green button that calculates how the faster route to port, but also if there's other ships in the port that makes you wait, then you can try to find another route. And that will reduce cost in the amount of time you sail, how much time you stand still at port waiting to get refueled or getting load on and off. So when you spend less on fuels, then of course it's if you still have the same budget to buy fuels for, then you can invest it in green fuels. Of course, it will also be cheaper in general to buy normal or fossil fuels in the end, but it can bring your own cost barrier as a company down. Also, you can see that it's also less time. Sometimes you have to go to get fixed. Every time you have to decommission a vessel to make sure that it's up to code and going on the ocean in the proper way, then it's also a lot of time, a lot of money you lose. And where we see Hempel, which is a Danish coating company, also makes paint. They coat the bottom of the ships and then makes them up to 20% more efficient in the water. So they glide through the water way faster. And it's a very specific and tangible action you can do, that you can do both to new ships, new builds, but also older vessels to make them more efficient. And you also save money in the long run as a company investing in these energy efficiency measures. And with reskilling, as you mentioned, I think a lot of people are worried about the green transition because you can see that jobs get lost, maybe jobs in the oil industry get lost, and you can see jobs change. And that's one of the ways that Denmark is trying to focus and refocus is reskilling. That you can see that even though you might not be able to fish at the fishing port, you might be able to do other jobs. Esbjerg port is a great example. When they saw the fish dwindling back years ago, they transitioned, and now it's one of the biggest ports for offshore build out. And in the same sense, especially because e-methanol, carbon capture are so closely related, a lot of carbon capture is going to reutilize some of the old places where there was oil drillings, especially like in the North Sea. So you can still have the jobs, you just have to get new skills. But also many of the old skills you had being on oil platforms, it's not that different taking oil out of the ground that putting CO2 back into the ground. So in that sense, they also have a lot of knowledge that we have to make sure it doesn't get lost, because people who've been there for generations sometimes, especially people like working at ports, they have like a strong communal aspect to their life job, maybe generations working there. They know things that we just can't figure out if we come from outside and we do everything. So also taking them into account. That was a big of a left turn, but I was thinking about it.
No, but absolutely. I mean, and that's what's also part of your publication is to say there is not only a need to focus on fuels and propulsion systems,
Exactly.
but there's other ways to approach the decarbonization of shipping. That's energy efficiency, and you mentioned logistics, technical aspects of energy efficiency for ships, but also and indeed the transformation of the workforce, which is not only a technical challenge, but also societal challenge as a whole, I would assume.
And depending on the country and the nation, you might be different places in the green transition. You might have started your first round and beginning to get the regulation just for solar and wind and getting the grid connected correctly. You might be further out, like in Denmark, where we are now thinking about how can we actually store some of the energy that we produce, because we produce so much renewable energy. But when it comes to shipping, every country, every nation, every company can have a lot of benefits from looking into energy efficiency. Like a thing we said a lot in my old company at the Danish Energy Agency is energy efficiency is the first fuel. Yeah. So always look into that before looking at so many other measures. Instead of heating your house when it's cold, maybe look into if it's insulated properly. Yeah. So that's where it is. And then of course, having the right workforce and a workforce that also is local to the context you're in. Because that will help a lot in the transition and a lot in the community around it to support the transition. It's way easier to do things when everyone agrees.
Yeah. So it's a systemic and integrated approach that we need, finding the right balance between new propulsion systems, solutions like energy efficiency, but also the whole aspects of society and workforce. Finally, and we've mentioned it in the beginning already, your publication also calls for just and equitable transition, ensuring developing nations benefit, ensuring that the transition we are in is indeed a global project. And we have seen, unfortunately, the IMO redistributive capacity mechanism being postponed. For political reasons only a few weeks or days ago. If we look into what happened and what will be happening going forward into the future, how do we see the IMO redistributive capacity related new funding? How do we see turn your ambition, our ambition into reality when hopefully implemented in a year? Where do we stand here?
I think if it is implemented in a year, which it's hard to say if it will be, that would help a lot with both getting the right signals to produce more green fuels, because then there is a confidence that that is something that has to happen. Otherwise, you get like the stick of the carrot of the stick approach. But also it gives some of the countries who are still developing and still needs the proper funding to get to a place where they can actually, where they're not constantly falling behind, because it can be, if you're already starting from one level behind everyone else, and then you have to do the green transition on top of that. That is like such a hard and also maybe too hard for us to expect. So giving them the extra funding and extra knowledge to actually get up to speed and get to the place where they're actually also in competitive advantage. And we see that we do want a competitive market where everyone is trading. And if we're suddenly leaving countries and nations behind because they're not getting the proper funding for that, then also we're in the end making it worse for everyone else on the planet. So it should be both something because you want to do it from your own willingness, that you're going to take this money from the tax of carbon and give it to countries who needs an extra push and extra leverage. But also we see it as a whole global issue if we don't do it, because globally it would benefit everyone that there's more trade and more balance in the system.
Yeah, and the IMO mechanism finally also ensures that we are doing this based on a level playing field for everyone involved globally.
It can be easy for Denmark to say just do green fuels, but if you don't even have electricity enough to power your own country, that's the last thing you want to do, is use a lot of electricity to produce green fuels for ships that's going to go around the world selling stuff. So of course we need to even the whole playing field.
Thanks so much. That's a great word to the end of the session. Emma, thank you so much for your insights and your time today. Your work and the Towards Zero report shows how collaboration across the value chain can turn climate action indeed into tangible opportunity. And Denmark's maritime ecosystem continues to set global benchmarks for what a fair and competitive green transition can look like. And it's on Denmark and Germany together, also in the framework of the European Union, to actually make sure that the IMO mechanism will be agreed upon in the future. And thank you to all of you joining us for the morning. Thank you for being part of A Coffee With. We look forward to welcoming you to our next A Coffee With on the 9th of December, again at 8:30. And we'll be talking with the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies, with Dasha Grivonos, about the future, a concept that has obviously also been and becoming more complicated these days. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day.